magazines or the designer watch that screams success. You hold it, admire its shine, and feel a rush of accomplishment. For a moment you feel complete, as if this one object has filled a void you didn't know how to name. You worked hard for this prize, dreaming of the day it would be yours. This purchase was supposed to be the key, the final piece of the puzzle that would unlock lasting happiness. You believed that owning this thing would fundamentally change how you felt about your life and yourself, elevating you to a new level of contentment and satisfaction. But then, a strange thing happens. The initial excitement begins to fade, like the fizz in a glass of soda left out for too long. The car becomes just a way to get to work, and the watch becomes just another accessory on your wrist. The powerful feeling of joy you expected to last forever has evaporated, leaving behind a familiar sense of emptiness. You might even find yourself looking at the next big thing, thinking, maybe that will be the thing that truly makes me happy. This cycle is a common experience for many who place their hopes for fulfillment in the things they can buy, a hollow promise that never quite delivers on its initial allure. This feeling of disillusionment is a universal story. Many of us are taught to chase material success as the ultimate goal. We see images of wealth and luxury everywhere and are led to believe that happiness is something you can purchase and own. We build our lives around acquiring more, bigger and better things, convinced that each new possession will bring us closer to a state of permanent joy. We sacrifice our time, our energy, and sometimes even our relationships in pursuit of these material goals, believing the payoff will be worth the immense personal cost. This relentless pursuit becomes the central theme of our lives. The truth, however, is often far more complicated and disappointing. The initial thrill of a new purchase is real, but it is fleeting. It is a temporary high, not a permanent state of being. When the novelty wears off, we are left right back where we started, often with the added pressure of debt and the realization that our happiness remains just as elusive as before. This is the empty promise of materialism. It offers a simple solution to a complex human need for meaning and connection, a solution that can never truly satisfy the deep-seated longing we all have for a genuinely fulfilling life. This endless cycle of wanting more has a name in psychology: the hedonic treadmill. Think of it like running on a treadmill at the gym. You keep running faster and faster, putting in more and more effort, but you never actually move forward or reach a new destination. You simply have to work harder, just to stay in the same place. This is precisely what happens with material possessions. Once we get used to a certain level of comfort or luxury, it no longer provides the same level of pleasure. Our expectations reset, and we need something even better to feel the same initial rush of excitement. For example, when you first upgrade from a small apartment to a slightly larger one, it feels wonderful. You have more space, more light, and a sense of progress. But after a few months, this new space becomes your normal reality. It no longer feels special, it just feels like home. Soon you might start noticing its flaws or dreaming of an even bigger house with a yard. The happiness boost you received from the upgrade has completely worn off. You have adapted to your new circumstances, and your baseline for what feels good has shifted upwards, setting you up for the next round of wanting. This psychological process of adaptation is a core part of being human, but it works against us when we tie our happiness to external things. We are wired to get used to our surroundings and circumstances, which is helpful for surviving difficult situations but detrimental when seeking lasting joy from purchases. The sports car that once felt exhilarating soon becomes just your daily driver. The expensive sound system that once amazed you fades into background noise. We are constantly chasing a high that, by its very nature, is designed to disappear, trapping us in a cycle of desire, acquisition, and eventual disappointment. This treadmill effect explains why even major life improvements like winning the lottery often fail to produce long-term happiness. Studies have shown that after an initial period of euphoria, lottery winners often return to their previous levels of happiness, or can even become less happy. They adapt to their new wealth, and the simple pleasures of life no longer bring them joy. They are stuck on the hedonic treadmill, requiring ever greater levels of stimulation to feel good. This pursuit is not just tiring, it is a race that has no finish line and no ultimate prize, only the constant need to keep running. It's not just a feeling. Scientific research confirms the link between materialism and unhappiness. My own work, along with that of many other researchers, has consistently shown that people who place a high value on wealth, possessions, and status tend to report lower levels of well-being. They experience less life satisfaction, fewer positive emotions like joy and contentment, and more negative emotions like sadness and anger. The very things they believe will make them happy are, in fact, correlated with the opposite outcome. This isn't a coincidence. It points to a fundamental conflict between material values and genuine psychological health. Furthermore, a strong materialistic mindset is closely tied to increased rates of anxiety and depression. The constant pressure to acquire more, to keep up with the latest trends, and to display one's success creates a significant mental burden. People become preoccupied with what they don't have, leading to feelings of inadequacy and envy. This focus on external validation means their self-worth is always on shaky ground, dependent on their next purchase or the approval of others. This unstable foundation for self-esteem is a recipe for chronic anxiety, as one can never feel truly secure in their own value. Materialistic values can also harm our relationships, which are one of the most important sources of happiness. When individuals prioritize possessions, they may have less time and energy to invest in their connections with family and friends. Conversations can become more superficial, centered on what people own rather than who they are. Research indicates that highly materialistic people tend to have lower quality relationships and feel more lonely. They may view others in terms of their usefulness or status, which undermines the potential for deep, authentic connection. This social isolation further contributes to feelings of emptiness and unhappiness. Ultimately, the science is clear. Chasing happiness through material goods is a losing strategy. It steers us away from the very things that are proven to build a fulfilling life, such as personal growth, community involvement, and strong social bonds. Instead of nurturing our intrinsic needs for autonomy, competence, and relatedness, materialism encourages us to focus on external rewards that provide only fleeting pleasure. The pursuit itself generates stress, insecurity, and social friction, creating a psychological environment where true contentment cannot possibly thrive. The data paints a picture not of success, but of struggle. One of the most powerful engines driving materialism is social comparison. You know, we are social creatures, and it's totally natural for us to look at others to gauge our own standing. However, in a consumer culture, this tendency can become pretty toxic. We don't just compare our character or our skills anymore. Instead, we compare our cars, our homes, our clothes, and our gadgets. We start using possessions as a yardstick to measure our success against that of our neighbors, colleagues, and even friends. This constant measurement turns life into a competition where the goal isn't really to be happy, but to be happier or richer than someone else. The problem with this game is that you can never truly win. There will always be someone who has more than you. You might buy the newest smartphone, only to see a friend with a more advanced model just a few weeks later. Or maybe you finally afford a home in a nice neighborhood, but then you start noticing the larger, more luxurious homes on the next street over. The finish line is always moving because the moment you catch up, a new standard appears on the horizon. This endless cycle of upward comparison ensures that you always feel like you're falling short, no matter how much you actually have. This relentless comparison is fueled by social media, which acts as a curated highlight reel of everyone else's life. We scroll through feeds filled with images of exotic vacations, expensive dinners, and perfect homes, and it's hard not to feel that our own lives are lacking. We forget that we're comparing our everyday reality to someone else's carefully constructed and filtered public image. This digital comparison trap just amplifies our insecurities and creates an insatiable desire to acquire the same symbols of success, not for our own enjoyment, but to project an image that can compete with the ones we see online. Ultimately, buying things for status is a hollow victory. The validation that comes from impressing others is fragile and short-lived. It doesn't build genuine self-esteem, which really comes from within. Instead, it makes our sense of worth dependent on the opinions of others, leaving us vulnerable and constantly needing more external approval. This trap of social comparison keeps us running in place, spending our money, time, and energy not on what brings us genuine joy, but on what we think will make us look successful in the eyes of others. It is, honestly, a race with no prize, only exhaustion. Beyond the fleeting nature of material happiness, a deep focus on possessions actually inflicts significant psychological harm. It cultivates a persistent sense of insecurity. When your self-worth is tied to what you own, you end up living in constant fear of losing it, or of someone else having more. You aren't valued for who you are, your kindness, your intelligence, your character, but for the brands you wear, or the car you drive. This external foundation for self-esteem is incredibly fragile. A job loss, a financial downturn, or simply a newer trend can shatter your sense of value, leaving you feeling worthless and exposed. This insecurity is a breeding ground for chronic stress and anxiety. The pressure to earn more money just to afford a certain lifestyle can lead to burnout, long working hours, and a neglect of personal well-being. There's also the constant worry about debt accumulated from lifestyle-driven purchases, and the fear of not being able to maintain the image you've created. This financial pressure isn't just a background hum, it's a loud, persistent noise that disrupts sleep, harms health, and strains relationships. The very objects that were supposed to bring peace and satisfaction end up being sources of immense and unrelenting stress. Materialism also fosters a sense of isolation. When the primary goal is accumulation, relationships can become transactional. People might be seen as either stepping stones or obstacles to material success. Genuine connection, which requires vulnerability, empathy, and time, is often pushed aside in favor of networking or other activities that promise a tangible return. This can lead to a profound sense of loneliness, even when you're surrounded by people. The pursuit of things can crowd out the very human connections that are essential for our mental and emotional health, leaving us feeling disconnected and alone in our curated worlds. Just consider the tragic stories of figures like Marilyn Monroe or Kurt Cobain. They achieved incredible fame and wealth, the ultimate symbols of material success in our culture. Yet both struggled deeply with depression, insecurity, and a sense of alienation. Their lives serve as powerful reminders that external achievements cannot heal internal wounds. No amount of money, adoration, or possessions could fill the void they felt inside. Their experiences starkly illustrate that the promises of materialism are, in the end, an illusion. True well-being is not something that can be bought. It has to be cultivated from within through meaning, connection, and self-acceptance. From a very young age, our culture bombards us with the message that more is better. Advertisements on television, on social media, and on billboards are designed to create a sense of lack. They tell us we are not thin enough, successful enough, or cool enough, but that we can be if only we buy their product. This relentless marketing machine teaches us to equate happiness with consumerism. Schools and even families can unintentionally reinforce this by praising material achievements over character development. We are conditioned to believe that our value as a person is directly linked to our purchasing power and the things we accumulate. In response to this pervasive consumer culture, movements like minimalism and slow living are gaining traction. These are not just trends, they're conscious philosophies for living a more intentional life. Minimalism encourages people to let go of superfluous possessions and focus only on what is truly necessary or brings them genuine joy. Slow living advocates for a more mindful pace of life, prioritizing experiences over acquisitions and quality over quantity. Both movements represent a powerful rebellion against the idea that happiness can be found in a shopping cart, offering a pathway back to a more authentic and meaningful existence. This shift invites us to ask ourselves some pretty profound questions. Who would I be without my possessions? What defines my self-worth if it is not my job title or the size of my bank account? These questions can be unsettling because they challenge the very foundation upon which many of us have built our identities. Yet, answering them is the first step toward discovering a more resilient and authentic source of happiness. It requires us to look inward and identify the values, passions, and relationships that truly define us, separate from any material attachments. Ultimately, the journey away from materialism is a journey toward true wealth. This wealth is not measured in dollars but in the richness of our relationships, the depth of our purpose, and the abundance of our gratitude. Lasting happiness comes from contributing to something larger than ourselves, from nurturing deep connections with others, and from appreciating the simple, non-material gifts of everyday life. So before you make your next purchase, just take a moment to reflect. Ask yourself what you are truly seeking. More often than not, you will find that what your soul truly craves cannot be bought in a store.